If you've ever wondered why you're not making any progress despite eating healthy, making changes, reducing sugar, this is the video for you. I'm going to be sharing one of the main things that I see blocking my clients from making progress. And I'm also going to be sharing with you how this super busy, chronically stressed person has been embracing a bit more of slower living and what that even means. Let's dive in. So this week's video is going to be a little bit different. You are going to be joining me on a walk in the field. I was inspired walking in the field, so grab a cup of tea, come and enjoy some Scottish scenery, and I'm going to be giving you a little bit of a nervous system 101. What on earth is a nervous system and why it matters and why it's potentially the reason you're not making the progress you want to be making. So many people come to me and actually they're eating pretty healthy. They might be doing a better job than I'm doing at eating healthy. They might be growing all of their own vegetables, yet they're not making progress. Things aren't actually changing. Symptoms keep getting worse, keep recurring. They're feeling like they're old and fat and frumpy and they're very confused. And often it's down to their nervous system. So I'm going to be sharing a little bit about that. And I'm also going to be doing a little bit of course correction in terms of this YouTube video and sharing with you my pursuits of slow living, what I've been doing, why I've been doing that, and what that looks like. So come join me in the field. I want to talk a little bit about my, let's say, attempts, but I don't think that gives me enough credit. And I really am trying to avoid the word journey because that's just super annoying. But into slow living and the importance and what I have learned about regulating your nervous system. I was looking over some of the videos I've done for YouTube and I realized that some of them came across like I was just really busy and full and that almost a little bit frantic, like there was so much going on in my life, and that didn't sit well with me, A, because it made me look at, am I actually more busy than I want to be? And B, because actually in answering that question, I have been very intentionally working on creating more space in my life and slowing down and trying to do less things and be really intentional and really create an environment and lifestyle that really supports my genetics, my nervous system, my brain. And I had been making progress in that. So then in my YouTube videos, am I wanting to portray this idea that I'm busy and full rather than the idea that my life is slower and more paced and is intentionally that way, which I thought was interesting. And it's a part of me that wants to appear to be keeping up with the Joneses, being busy, important, whereas actually the reality is I've been trying really hard to slow down because that spaciousness, that regulation of your nervous system plays such an important role in your hormone health, your gut health, your longevity, your joy of life, all the things. So I kind of wanted to clarify what that looks like, what that means, and why it's really important. So where do we start? Let's look at slow living. Some of the content that I watch on YouTube and what kind of inspired me to do my own channel was this idea of slow living. That's what keeping chickens is about, learning how to garden, training to be a yoga teacher. And I really look at slow living not necessarily as doing less stuff, although that's a part of it, and just sitting on a hammock. It's really about setting up your environment. Sorry, I'm walking up a hill. Setting up your environment to be one that facilitates your own peace and biological health, meaning what environment do you need to have healthy serotonin, dopamine, estrogen, progesterone, What environment do you need to cultivate good gut health? What environment facilitates your thriving, your sleep, your healing, your joy, all of these kind of things. And the movement of slow living kind of feeds into that really nicely. So I kind of wanted to just pause on here, do a bit of a, not a what do I eat in a day, not a video necessarily about food, but a video about really learning how to regulate our nervous system. Because I think that's another way of saying this is, I'll speak for myself as a person that has lived with a lot of anxiety my whole life, has had nervous system dysregulation, or saying it another way, being in a sympathetic nervous state has been normal for me, so much so that I don't even think I'm stressed, I don't even think I'm anxious, it's just my baseline, it's just my normal. One of the key things I've had to learn to do in the last 15 years in terms of my own health journey has been learning how to create the right data input for my brain. And this is where my brain, anyway, personally loves how all of these labels intermingle, you know, data input for your brain. You don't necessarily think of that from a slow living perspective, but really it's the same words for the same thing. One's just more geeky and scientific and the other one is more woo and feminine. But really, if we think about supporting our brain, what we want, we need our brains to feel safe in order to regulate our hormones and regulate our digestion and get the kind of air quotes results that we want. And what I found in my own healing journey is that the more that I support my brain health and regulate my nervous system, the more all the food changes, all the supplement changes, all the other things, all of that stuff works better. So this was a really nice idea in theory, and I've just realised I'm walking through like waist-high grass, and I've had pretty bad hay fever this year. What was going to be an in-depth, vulnerable conversation might just be me having a kind of allergic histamine reaction. So some of what I have been attempting to do for many years, and I have been making some progress, so I will give myself credit for that, but it is a daily challenge, as I witnessed in watching some of my own YouTube videos that were just like quite fast-paced and seemed to be very busy, is learning to regulate my nervous system, and as a part of that, how to create a bit more space. And that's partly why I want to do this channel, actually, was to almost provide a bit of accountability, the slow rhythms of making more of my own food, desperately trying to grow my own food, keeping chickens, all of these things, not only to nourish my body, but also to create a bit of a slower routines and habits of life that aren't just all work, because I can be very work-oriented. I definitely have tendencies to be a workaholic, especially in things I have that hyper focus on, that special interest in, as part of my neurodivergent brain. So yeah, I want to check in because I think it's really easy. I say this to my clients all the time. It's really easy to get stressed about eating healthier and getting well. Really easy. It's really easy to get stressed about removing gluten, dealing with sugar. It's really easy to get stressed about sorting out your hormones. It's really easy to get stressed about all these things. And if you do that, it's really counterproductive. So whenever we're talking about making changes to what we eat or working on our health, we have to look at regulating our nervous system and making sure we have tools that we know and that are well evidenced that actually help us to bring more stability and regulation. So a little bit of a nervous system 101, although I should go back in the trees because it's less windy there, is really simply put, the nervous system is a really complex and wonderful thing. There's many aspects to it. The aspect I'm talking about is the choice that you have between a sympathetic nervous state and a parasympathetic nervous state. Parasympathetic I think of as peace, as rest, as digest. A sympathetic nervous state I think of as stress, productivity, go, go, go all the time. And the goal is that we swing between the two like a pendulum. What I find with most of my clients and with myself is that my body is really good at the sympathetic nervous state, and it was very poor, or if we think about it from a muscle metaphor, the muscle for getting into a parasympathetic nervous state, incredibly weak, like not very well trained. So I am still, and I have been for many years, training that muscle of getting into a parasympathetic nervous state. It's part of what led me to start training as a yoga teacher. It's what initially, like, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago got me into meditation, all of these things, because I realized, even just from the literature, even just from the science, that this was a really important tool, that is meditation or breathwork, all these things were really, really important. Because then, depending on whether you're in a parasympathetic or sympathetic nervous state, that drives the signaling then. So even if we just, this is all really big picture stuff, if we just look at hormones, then your brain is going to communicate to your ovaries certain messages depending on what state you're in. So if you're having hormone issues and you're constantly in a sympathetic nervous state, that actually makes loads of sense, right? Because if your body, sympathetic nervous state is like when your body thinks there's a bear's coming, there's a threat, that you are not safe. Why would your body want to prepare to create a baby if you're perpetually getting this data input into your brain that you're not safe? So in order to create more balance with your hormones, you need to learn to regulate, get this pendulum swinging between sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous state. You don't have to be perfect. The goal isn't to just be like this Zen monk all the time. It's really unrealistic. The goal is that you have healthy movement between these two states and can shift from one to the other. Most of the clients I've worked with in the last 10 years, 90% of them, are not even aware that they're stuck in a sympathetic nervous state. First of all, they don't even know. They wouldn't even say they're stressed. They wouldn't, but their body is telling them, and then are completely clueless, unpracticed, and aren't equipped with the right tools to shift them out of that sympathetic nervous state. And that is what perpetuates a whole lot of health problems. Also, side note, like 4 months ago when I was walking in this field, these trees were like up to my knees. Look, it's like becoming a proper forest. It's amazing. It's funny how in different seasons of life, things just grow. And then come a couple of months when it's winter time, this will look like some sort of like barren land. It'll probably look like a bog, to be honest. If you don't know what a bog is, it's very wet ground that you find frequently in Scotland. So the best examples I can think of this are thinking about some previous clients I've worked with. And it's a common scenario. I get a client coming to work with me who actually knows so much about nutrition. They are completely on it. They maybe work in the health space. I've worked with loads of yoga teachers or health coaches or all these kind of health professionals. And they know loads about it. Yet they're not making any progress, or they're still really struggling. And often I can look at their food diaries and be like, you eat better than I do. Like this, like you are totally on it. And often what's going wrong is that whilst they're eating, air quotes, perfectly, there's so much stress about eating perfectly. There's so much fear around food. There's so much tension and contraction in the body around making sure I eat everything organic, and if I don't, everything's going to go wrong, and I need to do this gut protocol, and I need to restrict all of these foods because if I don't, I'm going to feel terrible and nothing will work, and the SIBO won't disappear and my hormones won't get balanced, and I have to really focus, or I have to do this macrobiotic thing that my yoga teacher guru told me, and there's a lot of stress and tension, and actually that is always going to derail you. That's always going to impact the results that you see. Whereas what I have found, and this is probably more in the last 5 years of being in my clinic, my online clinic, has been really experimenting with how do we blend the science, the lab data, your unique root causes, with a more softer approach to food, which isn't as focused on restriction, or is where the priority is you having a regulated nervous system, where the priority is you having a good relationship with food, not a really restrictive, stressful one. And now every client's different. I don't always feel like I get it perfectly right. But I feel like when clients do really take this nervous system work on board, along with understanding their root causes, running lab tests, having a personalized approach, and having personalized nervous system tools. Like, there's so many tools out there. It doesn't really matter how or what you do, whether you want faith-based strategies, whether you are into totally weird and wonderful stuff. The goal is that you just regulate your nervous system, whichever tool works for you. And I explore that with my clients so they find the right ones. But that actually makes a huge difference. And often when clients are unwilling, when they want to cling to the food restrictions, they want to only address food when there's so much dysregulation and tension. A good example of this was a client who knew loads about nutrition and was really struggling to see any results. And then after some months of working together, she said in a session that she just ended her relationship and that it had actually been a really toxic, unhelpful, if not abusive place to be. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is why you've not been making any progress. You've been hyper-fixating on your food and supplements because you couldn't bear to look at this really other toxic aspect of your environment. And that will have been part of what was keeping her stuck and keeping her sick. Not the only part, obviously, there's other stuff. But I think a lot of people I end up working with are often quite neurodivergent, not all of us. And so we do like hyper-fixate on things, and actually seeing the interconnectedness of stuff is really important. Just getting distracted. There's so many bees here. Isn't that reassuring? I feel like I always hear from the news about how the planet is going to absolute, you know what, and the bees are dying, we're all dying. Just come out here. You might not see them. See just the bees doing their thing. Butterflies. Top tip, if you're not sure how to regulate your nervous system, go out in nature. Really clear in the research. It's very regulating. It'd probably be more regulating if I stopped talking into my phone, let's be honest. So I'm back in my office and I'm about to dive in actually and do a root session with a new client. But I hope you enjoyed our little walk in the field. Let me know with a thumbs up emoji in the comments below if you like that. I'm trying to figure out, this is a new channel, what kind of videos and stuff would be helpful. I love a good walk and a chat. But before we wrap up, I want to make sure that you have some tangible kind of takeaways and actions for really implementing some of this. So whatever it is that you're working on, whether it's your hormones, your IBS, mental health issues, really starting to incorporate and experiment and figure out what the best kind of nervous system regulation tools are for you is really important. So I mentioned a couple in the video, so I just want to kind of bring them together here. So yoga is a great practice for that. That's why I'm training as a seasonal yoga teacher. Meditation, really well researched, lots of different types. And if you're new to meditation, it will be hard. It won't feel enjoyable. You'll probably feel like you're doing a bad job at it. All the more reason to pursue it. And also find your style. There's lots of different ways and kind of methodologies of meditation. So I recommend common apps if you're new to it, to just try different things. I use Insight Timer, there's Calm app, there's Headspace. There's so many apps out there. I have some of my own meditations that I send to clients that I create. I also love a yoga nidra, actually. That is where you don't move at all. That's one of my key things I always recommend clients to try, is just try out a yoga nidra. It involves lying down and getting all cozy, no movement, and it's otherwise known as non-sleep deep rest. Really helpful. So really start gathering those kind of tools, being out in nature, really amazing. And just breathing into your nose more. Breathe, just being aware of the breath. Those may sound really simple. I think that's 4 things. They may sound really simple, but those are really powerful things. And you don't need to incorporate them all at once. You might just start going back to that yoga class. You might just start using that meditation app that you have and haven't been using. You might just be more mindful when you're out walking the dog, or you might just work in an office all day and actually you just start going outside in the summer months or on your lunch break, whatever it is. But if you're looking to create more balance and see real results, it's what you eat really matters, because like we talked about in some previous videos, food is medicine and it's a really powerful, potent medicine. But if you don't regulate and support your brain and therefore your nervous system, it's really difficult to make progress if there's a lot of dysregulation going on there. And I was chatting to a client the other day of just being like, you know what, when you're making dinner and you're chopping onions frantically, like getting all tense, and you're going around the shop being like, quick, 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 go around the shop, pushing the trolley. Just let the shoulders go down and take some deep breaths and carry on with the task you're doing, but just do it a bit slower. And that's where that slow living component can come in, and that can be a really helpful framework as well for regulating your nervous system, of actually just being like, actually this philosophy, this idea of slow living can be a really helpful entry point. Really what it's doing is helping regulate your nervous system and helping you set up your environment so that your environment is one that allows you to really thrive and flourish and become that well, radiant woman that you are designed to be and that you get to be. The world needs more healthy, well, energized, balanced women. So sending you lots of love, and I'll see you next week.